Hare Krishna. Question from Divyangi Lita Mataji. What is the goal of the yogis who meditate on Paramatma? The Jnanis want to merge in Brahman. What exactly do the yogis aspire for? Answer. Patanjali in his Yoga Sutra does not explicitly talk about what Ishvara refers to. He does talk about Ishvara Pranidhan in terms of surrender to the Ishvara as one of the elements within the Ashtanga Yoga system. It is part of the Yam Niyama structure that one has to surrender to the Ishvara, but who exactly that Ishvara is, he doesn't refer to directly. And that's because the Patanjali Yoga Sutras are actually quite condensed, and he's focusing more on the practice of yoga, and he is speaking to an audience where the conception of Ishvara is already understood. So he doesn't, just like Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita does not prove the existence of God, because he's speaking in a culture where the existence of God is understood. So similarly, he doesn't go into the conception of Ishvara over there. So because Patanjali mentions Ishvara but does not go into a description of Ishvara, the people who follow Patanjali have come up with different interpretations. Now there are strong indications based on the verses of the Patanjali Yoga Sutra itself that the Yoga Sutras are personalist. That actually, as I said, Ishvara Pranidhan itself refers to the idea that one has to surrender to the Ishvara. But some yogis consider that this is just a transitional stage, and ultimately one has to go beyond. So the Patanjali Yoga Sutra doesn't directly talk about Ishvara, and it talks basically about the perfection that it talks about yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Chitta vritti nirodha. Chitta vritti is the moment of consciousness. Nirodha. Nirodha means stopping. And Krishna also refers to this in Yatra Uparamate Chittam Niruddham Yoga Sevaya. In 6.20, he talks about Yatra Uparamate Chittam. We stop the movement of the chitta, of the consciousness. Now the word chit, C-I-T, chit, is a feature of the Atma, Sat Chitananda. But chitta, C-I-T-T-A, chitta, refers to the consciousness of the soul that is rooted in matter. So Uparamate Chittam or Chitta Vritti Nirodha, that means the flow of consciousness in matter is stopped. Now once the flow of consciousness in matter is stopped, what happens afterwards? Does that consciousness remain passive? Does it remain completely frozen? So that is something which the various those people who claim to follow Patanjali, they claim that actually that is itself just the pacification of consciousness itself is the perfection. But there are other references which do indicate that there is also positive conception, and there are many who feel that Patanjali himself was a Vaishnava, although the school of thought that has come down through him and is attributed to him, it has gone through various we could say iterations or various alterations, and that's why. And so, for example, Baldev Vidyabhushan in his Vedanta Sutra commentary, he takes some of the implications of yoga, the beliefs about yoga as were prevalent at his time, and he refutes them, and he proves that actually yoga does not give the conclusive understanding. It's Vedanta which gives the conclusive understanding. So many yogis who practice yoga often have an impersonalist conception. That means their idea is, just like we know there is negative axis, which is material things, positive axis spiritual things, and zero is the neither material nor spiritual. It's a state of inactivity, impersonality, and non-emotionality, no relationships also. So often people think that many yogis who follow, they think that is the perfection. So then if that is the case, then the yogis become purified of material passions, and they come to the stage of Chitta Vritti Nirodha, and if they stay in that stage, then they will attain, they will aim for merging in Brahman, and depending on their conceptions, they will succeed accordingly. However, it's also possible that the yogis can, by the association of devotees, and get a higher devotional understanding. And now we may say, are the yogis personalists? Yogis are meditating on the Paramatma. That is the ultimate goal which they are supposed to meditate on. Yes, they are supposed to meditate on the Paramatma, definitely. But some yogis think that the Paramatma is something which we have to merge into. They don't think Paramatma is the highest reality. They think merging is the highest reality. So that is different. Others who understand that the Paramatma is the ultimate object of service, then they surrender to him. And often, if they still retain the mood of passive meditation on the Lord, as the yogis do, dhyana vastita tadgatena manasa pashyanti yam yogino. So the Bhagavatam describes in one of its concluding verses, it's glorifying that absolute truth who is the ultimate goal of the various transcendentalists. And it is, what do the yogis do with respect to that absolute truth? Dhyana vastita, they become situated in meditation. Tadgatena manasa pashyanti, and with the eye of the mind they see yam yogino. They see him in the heart. So now if they are fortunate enough to get the association of devotees, then they become devoted to him, and often this mood of passive meditation on the Lord is continued and they may attain Shantaras. Now Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his book Jaiva Dharma, he quotes on the basis of various important yogi shastra like Hiranda Samhita and others, and he talks about a yogi, about a bhakta who was following yoga sadhana. So he talks about Jaiva Dharma is basically like a novel in which, through the interactions between various characters, he brings about the truths of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the conclusion of the Vedic philosophy. So now, in this process, he describes that there is a person who is a seeker and he is coming to understand the truth. Then there is a yogi who is practicing bhakti. There are other bhaktas who are advanced bhaktas, but they are not practicing yoga. And then he thinks that a yogi is greater than a bhakta, but then this yogi tells him that actually that bhakta is my guru. And he's surprised. He says, I thought bhaktas were sentimentalists, and then yogis are higher. He says, I say the bhaktas are not having sense control, they do all sorts of silly things, whereas all you yogis practice so much austerity. So then this yogi takes him to his guru, and his guru explains that, so the yogi is also bhakta. That means there are three people. There is a seeker, there is a yogi bhakta, and there is a guru bhakta who is a non-yogi. That means there is a non-yogi bhakta guru whose disciple is a yogi bhakta, and bhakta who is practicing yoga sadhana. So he explains that actually yoga sadhana, bhaktas can also do yoga sadhana for gaining mastery over the senses and their mind, but often every process has its own associated baggage which comes with it. So by the process of yoga, one often tends to depend on oneself more. Yes, by my own determination, I will control my senses. And that can work unfavorably for a devotee in taking shelter of Krishna eventually. And that's why I say that devotees generally do not practice yoga as a sadhana. Even if their goal is Bhagwan, sadhya is Bhagwan, still they do not practice sadhana of yoga, because that's not, that can sometimes be pratikul to bhakti. But of course, it can be anukul also if one doesn't forget the goal and one doesn't forget to depend on the Lord, one doesn't rely only on one's own power, but seeks His grace. So in general, that means the yogis can, so it depends on what the yogis' conceptions are, whether they will just aim for chitta vritti nirodha, just pacific, just stilling, silencing of consciousness, and which will result in merging in Brahman, or whether they will evolve to a higher understanding by the association of devotees, or they already have an higher understanding but are practicing yoga sadhana for the sake of gaining sense control. So in this way, their destination can either be Brahman, or their destination can be Bhagwan in Shantaras or Bhagwan in a higher rasa also, if they practice if they develop the proper mood in worshipping the Lord. Thank you. Hare Krishna.